Howdy everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started here in a minute. If you want to take a seat, go ahead and take a seat. If you want to remain standing, that's fine too. Howdy everybody, thanks for being here tonight for our meeting on Little Cypress Creek Frontier Program. My name is Matt Zeev. I'm the Deputy Executive Director at the Harris County Flood Control District, and I just want to say a few opening remarks before I turn it over to our staff for a quick presentation, and then we'll let y'all continue the discussions that you're having in the back of the room. Before I begin, I'd like to recognize a few elected officials and their staff that are here. We have Cody Holder with representing Harris County Precinct 4 Commissioner Jack Table. Thanks, Cody. And we have State Representative for District 132, Mike Schofield, up here in the front. Thanks for being here tonight. So the way this program is going to work tonight, Alan and Erwin are going to make a brief presentation, and then it'll be an open house because we want to minimize the amount of talking we do to you and let y'all maximize the amount of talking you do to us so we can listen and answer questions that you have. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our Director of Engineering, Alan Black.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out on this chilly night. I'm a Houston boy. I can't stand the cold weather, so I certainly appreciate y'all coming out on a dark night like this. Again, my name is Alan Black. I'm the Director of Engineering at Harris County Flood Control District, and we're here today to talk about the Little Cypress Creek Frontier Program. And this is actually the first project-specific meeting that we've had with the public since the bond election passed on August 25th. And so if you went to any of those meetings in the summer, you'll find that the format is fairly similar. We're going to go through a couple of slides, and then we'll open it up for y'all to provide your input to us. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the Flood Control District proper. We were formed in 1937, and in addition to doing our own projects, we're also the local sponsor for federal projects that are constructed by the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Our mission is fairly simple, and that's to provide flood damage reduction projects that work with appropriate regard for community and natural values. And we implement that mission by devising, designing, and constructing projects across our 22 watersheds of Harris County. And every one of those watersheds is unique in how they function. In the case of Little Cypress Creek, as many of you all know, is a relatively slow responding watershed. What that really means is that when the waters come up, sometimes it takes a couple of days, if not a week, like it did after Harvey, for it to go back down. And so the projects that we design are somewhat catered to each of those watersheds. But it's important to understand why we flood. Some of it's pretty straightforward. We live on the Gulf Coast, water come in and off the Gulf, and we get really, really heavy rainfalls, and it's very flat here. But we also have a lot of clay, which means the ground doesn't absorb that water very well, and so you get a lot of runoff. But at the end, there's actually two different types of flooding. Some of it's called local flooding, and others is riverine flooding. Now, flood control's emphasis is on the riverine side, but we also work with local agencies like the MUDs, the cities, and Harris County Engineering on the local flooding issue. So what happens is, imagine this neighborhood that's over on the left was built back in, say, the 70s, and the storm sewers that are underneath those streets are a little smaller than maybe they would be designed today. And so we get this heavy rainfall that happens, and it just can't get out of the neighborhood fast enough. And that's what causes local flooding. It's not necessarily water coming up out of the creek, but water just can't leave the neighborhood fast enough. So we work with the MUDs and the agencies and Harris County Engineering to work in and increase the size of those pipes that will get the water out of the neighborhood faster. But in getting that water out faster, we can't cause floods to people that are downstream that didn't previously flood. So we build a detention basin. And this is where we have some good opportunities for collaboration between flood control and the local group, whether it's the MUD or the county, where when it's not flooding, we can incorporate some recreational elements, like maybe there's ball fields in the bottom or trails around the top. There's lots of opportunities to incorporate some recreation there. The purpose of that basin in flooding times is to hold that water, release it slowly into the creek. Alternatively, if the water starts to come up fast on the right side out of the creek, then it spills into the basin as opposed to into your homes, and again, holds that water for a period of time and then slowly releases it back into the creek. So these are the sort of projects that we've built into the bond election that voters approved on August 25th. The 237 projects that include 38 projects that came from community input. That's a result of the meetings we had over the summer where ideas were presented to us and we said, those are good ones, let's incorporate that in there. So the $2.5 billion bond election, we hope to actually turn into about $4 billion worth of projects by leveraging some local money against all these different federal funding opportunities that became available as a result of Hurricane Harvey. If you have any questions specific to those grant opportunities, come and talk to me. I've kind of added that extra hat to my job to become something of an expert on the federal grant opportunities. So with that, I'm going to turn the baton over to Mr. Erwin Burden, who's the program manager for the Little Cypress Creek Frontier Program.
Thank you very much. I'm Erwin Burden. I work on the Little Cypress Creek program. I've been with the district for about 5 years. I've had the privilege and the honor to work on this program. It's a very exciting program to me. The watershed is around 53 square miles, so it's not a huge area, but it's a fairly large area. The size of most small towns like Conroe. There's several towns in this area. That's the footprint. The watershed here the watershed here has 150 feet of fall across the watershed, which is kind of unique. Let me go back to the program. The program is a frontier program. The district is trying to get ahead of development by working to accomplish with regional facilities to actually partner with development to actually come up with solutions that solve solve the existing flooding as well as the ultimate development. So when the watershed is completely built out, the floodplains will be hopefully contained within the channels of the banks. The way that this program works is we looked at the localized areas. We looked at the channels. The blue is the floodplains. We've tried to target a lot of those areas that are flood anyway. We're trying to enhance those to make those flood worse and actually contain the floods in that area. The outlining areas, this is 290. This is Kickapoo. Muskie Road is right about here. Cypress Rose Hill is right about there. And I want you to make sure you remember Kluge. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more in a minute. The watershed is mostly developed right at Cypress Rose Hill. On the west side, it's more rural, it's more open space. It's Precinct 3 is more out there as well. It also is divided at Cypress Rose Hill at Precinct 4, which is the yellow, and it's more developed on this side where there's a lot of subdivisions existing. Well, we also planned these channels, which there's a lot of relief, so there's no channels out here, and there's very shallow channels out here, so they're like less than 3 feet deep in a lot of locations. One thing I want you to notice is that you notice the channels and the basins that are the footprint, they're actually lined up with the floodplains, which is what we're trying to do. We watched we went out there and we did high water marks after the storm events. We actually used that information to actually calibrate our hydraulic stuff, to actually simulate what you see. So this is what you saw during the tax day storm. We actually simulated that with our maps and our models to actually predict what we need to do for improvements. The other part of the program is we actually work with development. We created some guidelines which actually require the development to not only meet our standard criteria of the county, but they also have to meet some additional criteria. We're working with the developers and landowners to actually acquire the real estate to secure these basins so we can get them constructed. And then the master drainage plan is trying to be finalized that show all how that works. The developer is currently in the interim guidelines. This will probably a 20-page document. But it boils down to really two things that mean something to you. We require all of them to pay $4,000 an acre for every developable acre. They have to dig in our basins, so in real estate that we own. So the regional basins, that's where the volume comes from, which you won't have to pay for. You normally have to build a basin. We will dig those holes. The developers will dig the holes for us on this one. We, if you look at the map we were talking about, we have Kluge Road. If we do all the improvements shown in the master plan, we broke it into the Cypress Rose Hill upstream of that, which is the more rural area, and at Cypress Rose Hill upstream, and at Kluge Road, we'll see about a 1 foot reduction in floodplain with the current plan we have going forward. If we do channel improvements downstream, we will see the banks of the floodplain drop within banks at Kluge Road Bridge. So those are the benefits we're going to see of the program, which shows a net negative impact on Cypress Creek. The projects we're looking at tonight, this is all the watershed. We're looking at 7 additional basins in the watershed, which are the big holes in the ground that you see. These are fairly large. We're looking at the Bower-Hockley Basin, which is right there. We're looking at Zuby. We're looking at the Shield Basin, and we're looking at the Cled Woods Basin. And we'll go through those more in detail. The Zuby Basin is about a 90-foot footprint. It has, I think it's 723 acre-foot of storage, which 90 foot, to give you a little idea, the Reliant Stadium complex is about 250 acres. So where the Astrodome is and Reliant Stadium, all that, so 250 acres. This will be a 90-acre footprint, which is almost half of that. The Shield Basin, this is in the middle. This one's over 2.5, well, this is a little over 2 times as big as the Reliant Park Stadium. So you can actually put Reliant Park in both sides of this basin, not touch the sides. The Bower-Hockley Basin, it's about 100 acres, so it's just a little bit less than half. And the Cled Woods is about 100 acres, so it's a little less than half. This basin holds about, that really doesn't matter. It's just, these basins are a little bit smaller. They hold about 600 to 700 acre feet of storage. The big one's going to hold about 5,000 to 6,000 acre feet of storage, which is the Shield Basin. So we're talking a very large basin. Looking forward, what we're trying to do is we're going to finalize the master plan. We get comments from you. We will finalize the development guidelines, which are interim right now, but we don't see much changes. We will continue going forward with that. We'll continue with our proposed projects as the bond moves forward, and we'll acquire real estate, and we'll seek grant funding where possible.
Thank you very much, Erwin. So one thing I wanted to point out is that we're here to talk about 4 particular detention basins that are part of a bigger program. The other basins that show up as part of this master plan will come back to the public again when we're ready to do preliminary engineering studies for those individual basins. But we wanted to start by seeking input on these 4 basins that we really had already underway as part of our Frontier program, that with the passage of the bond election, we're now able to accelerate and move forward with these. So that concludes the information we wanted to formally present to everybody. And so we're going to move to an open house part here. But we really want to get y'all's input, and you can provide that a couple of different ways. There's a lot of staff here. Can everybody back there raise their hand that's here to talk with us tonight? Thank you so much for being here. Those are the folks that are experts on various projects we have going on. You can talk with them. We have hard copies, I believe, to be able to submit some input that way. You can also go online. Now, we want to wrap up the formal documentation part of seeking input over the course of about 2 weeks. We can always take additional input after that, but if you can try and get your input on these individual projects in the next 2 weeks, then we can make that a part of our formal documentation. So with that, I think we'll close everything out on our presentation. If you could make your way to the back, and we'll open up that open house. Thanks for coming, everybody.